Welcome to our continuing series, Questions and Answers from Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, Part 15, On the World, Manifestation. From the Mother. These are the Mother's replies to questions asked about some of Sri Aurobindo's thoughts and aphorisms. Aphorism number 115. The world is a long recurring decimal, with Brahman for its integer. The period seems to begin and end, but the fraction is eternal. It will never have an end, and never had any real beginning. Number 116. The beginning and end of things is a conventional term of our experience. In their true existence, these terms have no reality. There is no end and no beginning. Mother, only last week there was a whole development of this experience. In fact, it is the same thing for worlds as for individuals, for universes as for worlds. Only the duration is different. An individual is small, a world is a little bigger, and a universe is a little bigger still. But what has a beginning has an end. Disciple to the Mother. And yet Sri Aurobindo says there is no end and no beginning. Mother. We have to use words, but the thing escapes. What we know as the eternal principle, the supreme, God, has neither beginning nor end. We are obliged to say it is, but it is not like that, because it is beyond non-manifestation and manifestation. It is something which we are unable to understand and perceive in the manifestation, and that is what has neither beginning nor end. But constantly and eternally, that is manifested in something that begins and ends. Only there are two ways of ending. One which appears to be a destruction, an annihilation, and another which is a transformation. And it would seem that as the manifestation becomes more perfect, the necessity of destruction diminishes, until a time comes when it will disappear and be replaced by a process of progressive transformation. But this is a very human and external way of putting it. I am fully aware of the inadequacy of words, but through the words you must catch hold of the thing. The difficulty for human thought, and still more for expression, is that words always carry a sense of beginning. I have had a perception of this manifestation, a pulsating manifestation, one might say, which expands and contracts, expands and contracts. And there comes a time when there is such an expansion, such a fluidity, plasticity, capacity for change, that there is no longer any need for it to be reabsorbed, so that it can take a new form. And there will be a progressive transformation. I used to know an occultist who said that this is the seventh universal creation, that there have already been 6 pralayas, and that this is the 7th creation, but that this one will be able to transform itself without being reabsorbed, which obviously has no importance whatsoever, for when one has the eternal consciousness, it does not matter whether it is like this or like that. Only in the limited human consciousness is there this kind of ambition or need for something that has no end, because within there is what might be called the memory of eternity. And this memory of eternity aspires for the manifestation to share in this eternity. But if this sense of eternity is active and present, we do not grieve. We do not grieve when we throw away a spoiled garment. We may be attached to it, but even so, we do not grieve. It is the same thing. If a universe disappears, it means that it has fully fulfilled its function. It has come to the end of its possibilities and must be replaced by another one. I have followed the whole curve. When you are very small in consciousness and development, you feel a great need that the earth should not disappear, that it should continue perpetually, can go on transforming itself. But it should always be the earth that goes on. A little later, when you are a little more mature, you give it much less importance. And when you are in constant communion with the sense of eternity, it becomes merely a question of choice. It is no longer a need, because it is something that does not affect the active consciousness. A few days ago, I do not remember when, but very recently, I lived this consciousness for a whole morning, and I saw, in the curve of the being's development, that this kind of need, which seems to be deep-seated, for the life of the earth to be prolonged, for the life of the earth to be prolonged indefinitely, this need is objectified. So to say, it is no longer deep-seated. It is like looking at a performance and judging whether it should be like this or like that. It was an interesting change of viewpoint. It is like an artist, but an artist giving shape to himself, making 1 trial, 2 trials, 3 trials, as many as he needs, and then achieving something complete enough in itself and receptive enough to be able to adapt to new manifestations, to the needs of these new manifestations, so that it would not be necessary to draw everything back in, to mix it all up and bring it all out again. But it is nothing more than this, and, as I say, a question of choice. After all, the manifestation is made for the delight of objectivization, the delight or interest and once what has taken shape is plastic enough, receptive enough, flexible enough, and vast enough to be capable of being constantly molded by the new forces that are manifesting, there is no longer any need to unmake everything in order to remake it. With the curve also came an adage: what has a beginning must have an end. This seems to be one of those human mental constructions that are not necessarily true. But subjectively, what is interesting is that the problem gradually becomes less acute as one views it from higher up, or from a more central point, to be more exact. It seems that it is the same, not principle, because it is not a principle, the same law for the individual as for worlds and universes.